We got it.
That's trippy. Yay. Yeah, and yeah, if it works, I'll send it to you. How about that?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying I took a couple notes because I need that. So also I'm going to be writing a little bit if that's okay. I just want to let you know. So first, thank you so much. I'm so happy I found your Instagram. My friend was the one that shared it with me and I was like, oh my God, I love it. It's literally perfect. You're so honest. There's so much I relate to. You recorded a video also where you were doing it live and you're like, I need to just get over like the perfection of, and I was like, wow, that's so real. Like, I mean, everything, but I really related to that one too. So
okay, that means like, that's so much to me because like every single day I'm like, wow, I really suck at this Instagram thing. Like every single day I'm like, everyone else is like so good at this and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
no,
And so
literally, it's amazing. I love that you don't know what you're doing. Like it just is so real. And then like when you posted about, you said you were having a panic attack and you like actually posted that, it's so vulnerable and it's so nice to see that you're not alone in experiencing these things. And I really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
oh, that means so much that it's like being received that way because like the little anxiety in your head is like, wow, what are you doing? Like, why are you posting this shit? So even if it's just like you over there, where are you? California? Where'd you say you were?
California.
You over in California and you're like relatable. I think that's all that matters. And I'm just gonna try to use that to like keep
internalize
going.
it. Keep going because we really appreciate it, my friends and I. So thank you. First of all.
So sweet.
Yes, I wanted to share that with you. The second thing is I'm going to ask some questions, and if you don't feel comfortable answering, there's literally zero pressure. So don't feel like you have to. I try to veer away for anything like a little too personal. So, but again, just be like, you know what, I don't want to answer, and that's fine.
Okay.
Literally no pressure. So I guess I'm gonna start and you can ask me. I want to make this conversational, but I just have a little outline for myself so I'm not like, what do I ask, So first I want to start by asking you, what words do you feel comfortable using, like specifically with the word fat? Like, are you comfortable with it? Can we talk about it? Do you prefer large? Like, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think that it differs for every single person. So for me, it depends on the context. So like, it is not my like first label or like the first thing I use to describe myself. Like first I say like, I'm living with mental illness. That's like my first identifier. So if I'm like trying to join a conversation talking about fat liberation or body image, I'll say like, yeah, like I'm a fat woman or I'm also fat, or talking like within a collective. But if I'm speaking like just individually, I usually say like I'm living in a bigger body. So I'm okay using the term fat. And like if you have any questions, like you like feel free to use the term fat. I feel like for me it's not as accessible in my own language with myself. I tend to use like, I feel like living in a larger body is like usually what I say, but it's like it's long. But I mean being a bigger person, fat. Yeah, so do whatever works.
Okay. Well, because I also feel like there's also like, it's so loaded. It like holds so much meaning for every single person in a different way. So first I want to be sensitive to that. And also it's like every perspective is different. Like I know some people, like I have a friend who's like, I'm fat, and like really like uses that word to like empower herself. Whereas some other like, you know what, I actually don't like that word. I prefer like, like you said. So I want to make sure we're on the
and
same
I really
page.
appreciate that because I agree. And like I also love when other people are very confident in the term fat and they're like, yeah, I'm a fat woman, or I am fat, and it's such a normal term. And I agree. Sorry, I agree with like the normalization of the term. I'm just like, I feel like I have some more like trauma to work through before I'm like fully comfortable using it all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's listen, valid. Okay, so then we'll use, I guess, bigger bodies, large bodies.
Yeah. I
We'll
like
use those terms. Okay.
cool.
All right. So I guess I want to ask you, first of all, what led you to even want to start pursuing, your activism on social media? Like what brought you to that point?
I guess so the real thing, like, I mean, I've been on social media just casually for a while, but I really started putting a lot more time and effort in about 2 years ago when I was turned away from accessing a mental health resource at my university. And I was pissed. I was so mad because I just thought, like, okay, if I'm being turned away, like, what about all the other students? Like, where are we all gonna go? And I went to Instagram and I was talking about my frustrations, and surprisingly people were like, oh my god, like, I didn't know you had anxiety, like, I have depression, I've never told anyone. And I was like, whoa, this is insane. And just getting even just some small feedback at the time and being like, okay, maybe I can like talk about my experience and other people can feel like less alone in this bullshit. So I just kept going.
That's a
Yeah.
good way to start. That's a good way to
Yeah.
start. And you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
up
okay.
here in the Canada.
Like Canada. Okay. So let's just write that down. So I guess my next question, and again, feel free to disclose however much you want to disclose, but what sort of experiences growing up have you had around diet culture and fat phobia, and specifically, like, I guess within school? I mean, you can choose to talk about whatever, but within your own home, family dynamics, peer groups, like what, if any, but what sort of experiences have you had? Were they mostly negative, positive, a mix? How would you describe that?
Yeah, mostly negative, if not all negative.
Yep.
Grew up in a
Okay.
very fat phobic household where all of my family members, or like my immediate family members, like were living in bigger bodies.
Mhm.
And I was told from a very, very young age that my body is bad and we need to change it. And
Mhm.
that included a lot of restriction and shame and dieting. Um, yeah, like the earliest I remember is like 5 years old being like, oh, like I'm too big, or like thinking that, or not even just thinking, but like knowing like, oh, I am
Mhm.
bad because of this, like I will not be happy or people will not like me until it's something that I change. So yeah, that was literally my entire life,
Mhm.
until I was 8. Oh my god, my Google thing just made sounds. That was super weird. I'm so sorry. I was just like, that freaked me out. But I'm not talking to you, Google. I'm not.
Don't worry.
Google, stop. Hey, Google, stop.
Google's always listening.
Always listening. That usually that's like never happened to me. I'm like, I didn't even say the words, I don't think, but that's insane. I need to throw those off a balcony. Anyways, so yeah, until I was about 18 and I went to university and I saw people of all different body shapes and sizes, and I was like, holy shit, like maybe you don't just have to look a certain way, but like still really ingrained in fat phobia and diet culture. And so I guess that was like the first like turning point. So I was like, oh shit. And then
Okay.
what was the second? It's been like a gradual process of learning and following fat women on Instagram and being like, holy shit, they're beautiful and they're living their damn life, and I would never tell them to shrink their bodies. So why the hell am I telling myself that? And clothing stores having more plus size lines, and it's like, oh shit, I can wear cute clothes now. Maybe I don't have to shrink myself. Like, it was just this progression of all these things becoming more accessible.
Mm.
And even now I am seeing a dietitian weekly who believes in like health at every size, and like we're
Yeah.
working through that. And it's just it's been a journey, but I'd say Instagram was probably the number one influencer of just seeing all these different people in all different shapes and sizes and all different bodies, and being like, oh, Like maybe I'm okay like just the way I am, or these people maybe don't think I need to shrink myself. And yeah, I guess just finding my own community outside of like my family.
Yeah. Um, it's wild because I feel like Instagram can be such a powerful tool for either like empowering yourself or like the opposite.
100%.
It's just how you use it. And it makes me think about like specifically like young people who might not, like when I first got an Instagram, I was on the explore page and I remember seeing like all these influencers and like body models, and they had such a, and it's so bad for your, you know, your self-image, your
Yes.
mental health, all of it, if you don't know how to utilize it properly.
And it's something I forget about because I don't follow the Kardashians. I don't follow those people that you can see that they like edit to have like a perfect shape. You know, like I just don't
Hourglass.
follow them.
Yeah.
Well, then when people are talking about diet culture, I'm like, oh, is it still there? Like, is it still, are people still following these influencers who are just like so toxic? And then I talk to people, I'm like, holy shit, this is still a problem. And people still don't understand diet culture. And so that's been a wake up call for me lately. Is like, okay, there's more work to do. Like, I'm in this very niched corner of the internet where
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, dieting is harmful and you can love it. You know, I'm just like, where people kind of like are understanding. So when I step outside of that, I'm like, oh shit, we have more work to do. And it's overwhelming because I'm like, I don't know how to save the young girls. I don't know how to save them.
No, 100%, 100%. It's really interesting because me and one of my closest friends, we always talk about like diet culture, fat phobia, like wellness culture, and like how harmful it is. And we forget that like people aren't there. And so when I'm at work, like I work in education right now, like until I become a therapist. And like even at work, people are like, oh, get those donuts away. Like they're so dangerous. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, okay, this is still a thing. It's not just because my friend and I are like aware of it and a couple of my like
Mhm.
people that like everyone is on that same wavelength, you know?
Oh, interesting to go out in the world and yeah, someone say something like that and it's like, what? Okay, like that was
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
Lit- no, literally, literally. So that's very interesting. So you would say that you definitely had it negatively in your childhood, and then when you got into university and with Instagram, you were able to sort of start that gradual shift to like a different perspective.
Yeah, like
Towards
I guess my also like when I went to university, it's when I moved out of my parents' house. So
Mm,
being like a physical separation from that mentality, from the shaming or microaggressions and all of that, that yeah, that was kind of I think the first step that allowed me to like form my own opinions or just see that yeah that there was like people on like a varsity team that were like living in bigger bodies and like a major athlete and I was like whoa, okay, like that's not what I've been told my whole life.
yeah, because we're so, I think, maybe programmed to think like, oh, if you're in a bigger body, you're not healthy. You
Yeah,
can't be active.
100%,
You
that's what
can't
we're
dance.
told. Yeah. And even like I think about that, like, oh, I wonder like maybe I would have liked sports growing up. Like, but I was told from such a young age, like, look at those fit people, or like I don't even know where the idea, like I don't remember the conversation, but I always just knew like, oh, I can't do those things because of my body, or like I'm gonna be laughed at or I'm gonna be judged. And so I always had like an aversion to sports or athletics or movement and exercise in general. And it was really like this year that I was like, oh, wow, what would that have been like if I like didn't if I wasn't taught that from the beginning? Like I don't think I just naturally hated sports. Like there was just so much anxiety surrounding it that I wouldn't be good enough.
Mm,
I'm like, wow, what if I don't actually like hate those things? What if it's just yeah.
yeah.
That makes me sad of like, oh, that could have been an interesting part of my childhood if I actually had that incorporated into my life, but never was.
Yeah. So how do you feel about movement now, I guess? Like,
It's still
is that
hard.
like, yeah,
You know, it's like
yeah.
I logically know so much about it. Like I have a bachelor of psychology or a bachelor of science in psychology, and so like I've read lots of research about like how movement and exercise is so good for like your mental health, physical health, all these different aspects. And so I'm like, okay, I know it's good, and I still have so many hangups that, oh, like exercise, working out is for weight loss only. And so then in my like rejection of diet culture, I'm like, I'm rejecting that as well. And now
Mm,
I'm trying to like find different things that actually bring me joy. That's like, okay, like I don't want to go for a run. That sounds stupid. Like it doesn't seem enjoyable to me. But I'm like, okay, maybe I can try going for a swim. Like, is that going to be more enjoyable? Or, things like I used to really like going to spin class,
mm-hmm.
but it was all about how much I'm burning. Like it was very, very a toxic mindset. So now I'm scared. I'm like, I don't want to go back because that's when I was like in full diet culture, and I don't know if I can separate the two
Got
of just
it.
enjoying, relaxing. And so that's been a really big challenge, is like, okay, I really do want to honor my body by engaging in movement,
Right.
but I just don't know how right now without it leading back to like intrusive thoughts or like a negative self-image, or like examining my body more, like, oh, is it changing? Like that's just, I'm really scared of that. So I've just kind of like ignored it completely.
Yeah.
Also sucks.
Yeah. No, but that's so true. Like, I didn't even think of the aspect of like associating, like, people work out because they want, like, that's the general narrative is like, I'm working out so I can like lose weight and like look a certain kind of way. But like, it's interesting for you because you're rejecting it. So you're like, well, I'm just going to reject that. And then there's also the fear of like, oh, well, if I go and my body does start to change, maybe I'll start to get into more of a, more toxic
Right? Like if I'm going,
idea.
and what if people comment on my body like, "Oh my God, you look so good," or or if I'm just noticing like, "Oh, I shouldn't eat that because I'm going to go work out today," or like things, it just feels like a slippery slope. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to like slowly work through it, and I'm making sure I'm like talking to my dietitian about it every time to be like, so she can also catch me if I'm having intrusive thoughts, like wanting to tell that to her, so
Mhm.
someone, I guess, can help before things like get out of control.
Spiral. It's
Yeah,
so nuanced. It's like so nuanced.
100%.
And it's
And
so
people don't
like,
understand. They're like, just go for a walk, just go exercise. And it's like, there's so much behind it. It's not just, oh my God, like you're just sitting, like doing nothing. We're in a pandemic, like go exercise, move your body. It's like, it's not that easy. It is
it's,
not that
yeah,
easy.
literally.
Yeah.
It's so nuanced. There's so much that goes behind it, especially. It's like so much easier for someone who maybe hasn't struggled with it in the way that you have to like
Mhm.
say that. Especially also during the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of that has like been a
That's been
thing.
really hard too, because at first it was like, okay, cool, like I'm not expected to engage in movement, there's a pandemic, I can relax. But then it's like even finding that my body is sore or stiff, and I'm like, okay, I'm not like doing, like I used to like walk to appointments, I'm like, okay, I'm not doing those little things anymore. Like I'm feeling it in my body, and I'm like, okay, I don't want that in my body. So I'm like trying to do some stretching, or like I feel like I need to, but it's just like, yeah, what's the safest route to accomplishing that? So it's something I'm working on.
Listen, it's all we can do.
Right.
It's just work and navigate it. I'm glad that you have, it sounds, you said you're in therapy too, right? And you see
Yeah,
a
I mean,
dietitian,
I'm kind of
so
like in a break from therapy at the very moment, because I was in like an intensive therapy program until the end of August.
okay.
And then I tried like two therapists, and I was like, we didn't really click perfectly. And so then I have a new therapist starting next week, and she's like really, she's really, really cool. We had like just a brief meeting, and she is like aware of like fat phobia and like how that like internalized fat phobia. And so being able to work on those types of things together. So I'm excited, and I hope she can help.
That's awesome. I hope so too.
Yeah.
Um, what I guess since we're now talking a little bit about mental health is like what I guess I have two questions. One is I don't want to assume, but like have you encountered in the mental health field fat phobia? I know in one of your
Yeah.
videos, you talked about that dietitian who came and was like demonizing food groups.
I hated that. I forgot about that. That was a horrible time. Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, I've
And
definitely had that even with my psychiatrist that I saw for like a year. Oh, I hated him. He would tell me every time, like, okay, we'll just make sure you're exercising 3 times a week and you're eating healthy. And I was like really not okay at that time, like just trying to survive school. I'd, ADHD, but not on ADHD meds. Like I was on the wrong meds all over. And I was like, I hear you. I agree with you. It is not that easy. And he's like, yeah, well, just make sure you are. And I'm like,
mm,
fuck off, because like it's just not easy, like in for diet culture. And also like when you're so anxious or feeling depressed, like, yeah, I just want to go for a run. No. So yeah, I've definitely experienced a lot of that. Or even doctors, when I first went to go talk to someone about my anxiety, he said just go exercise and eat healthy for a few months and then come back. And I don't remember what I said. I don't even remember what happened. I think I tried to block it out. So eventually I got meds, but like he would have never said that to someone living in a smaller body. They were just giving you the meds, but he didn't know my lifestyle. He didn't know what I was or was not doing. And yeah, so there's definitely that barrier where professionals just look at you and think, okay, well, for obvious reasons, you should work on your lifestyle and that's obviously going to help. And it's like, even if, yes, movement and maybe eating a more balanced diet would help, but it's like getting there. It's not just like, oh, I just really, didn't really think about it. Or there's obviously a barrier between accessing those things. So yeah, it sucks.
it sucks. There's also such a lack of awareness, like in the medical, in the medical field itself. Like I was talking to a friend and she was telling me she hates going to the doctor for numerous reasons. And one of them being like, they're so insensitive to like someone who could possibly have an eating disorder. And they wouldn't guess that either because of her size. So they'll put her on a scale, which is a trigger. They will tell her, oh, you really need to like work out and blah, blah, blah. And another experience is like, I think they like bring up BMI, which is like, we can all agree the BMI
Bullshit.
is like
Yeah.
such bullshit, like
Yeah.
such bullshit. And it's a really triggering experience for her. Like, and they're like, oh, you need to eat more healthy. Like, just there's such a lack of awareness and disconnect between like doctors and mental health and eating disorder. It's like so I don't have
Yeah,
words for it. It's just so
I know. It's really frustrating. Like my recent trip to the doctors, yeah, what did I ask him for? I think I asked him just for like a refill for my meds, and he said like, oh my God, what did he say to me? Oh yeah, he asked me like are you exercising? Like make sure you're exercising and make sure you're eating healthy, blah blah blah, or watching your diet. And I said to him like, yeah, I have atypical anorexia, so those things are really tough for me. And he's like, oh, okay, well then just make sure you're exercising lots. I'm like, that is not helpful. That's all a part of it. Like it was still saying like, okay, yeah, I mean like sure I can help you, but you still need to like lose weight. And it's like even after I disclosed my eating disorder, he was still like, okay. Like it sucks.
sucks. And it's like really interesting to think about maybe the way like capitalism, misogyny, racism are like all intertwined with like body size. It's like so hard to like sift and like separate all those things.
Totally. They're totally interconnected in so many different ways. Like, yeah, like would he have been more respectful if I was a man? Maybe. We also accept that men can live in larger bodies for some reason, but like women have to be like small and dainty. There's so much, and especially if I was like a black woman, I would be even more dismissed, or an indigenous woman. So yeah, I agree with you. That's all so connected, especially because like for me, I'm Italian, and like naturally, like biologically, I'm just bigger. Even at my very smallest, I was still like a size 12. So I'm like, okay, we're not going to shrink ourselves. And so for me, that's just my body and like some of my family members' bodies and like genetics, man. Like,
Yeah, it's genetics, it's culture. It's like, that's why the BMI is so irrelevant, because it doesn't take in the like vastness of like human identity. And it's, I don't know where we change it, but like, I'm glad that at least there's people like you talking about it, because it's a lot.
yeah, and it's so frustrating and it feels like helpless because I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do. Like, yeah, I get in the mindset of, okay, here's a problem now, how do I fix it? And it isn't something I just, flip a switch and it's over. It is important that we're having these conversations and like you becoming a therapist, like you also being aware and like other therapists or mental health professionals being aware of these things so that we don't continue to like perpetrate the stigma and continue to cause harm.
Amen. Honestly,
Yeah.
amen. Really, I guess, we talked about this. Let's see, we talked a little bit about that. Okay, so another question. I know that you mentioned a little bit on your Instagram, you talked about sometimes when family members, I think, are like talking about either weight gain, body size, diet culture, you've told them like, if you're gonna talk about this, I'm gonna like put on my headphones or tell me to leave the room because I can't listen to it. How does it feel enacting those boundaries? I'm sure it still is a struggle. Is it still a struggle? Like, what is your experience in that with friends and family? Like, if you want to elaborate a little bit about it.
Yeah, I would say it's still a struggle. And like even setting those boundaries with my family at first was really, really scary. But now that I've had more conversations with my family, I'm I feel less afraid and just like, okay, like we've talked about this, like stop. But I notice that I have a harder time with my friends. Like family, I think they're stuck. They're like, you're stuck with them,
Yeah.
and you guys can yell and they piss you off, and you're mad about whatever. And but like I've had some friends, like I've hung out with some friends even kind of like pre-pandemic or like just at the very beginning, and they were talking about like the obesity pandemic or like obesity epidemic or like just fat phobic things. And I was like, I remember in that moment being like, okay, like my morals and values are that I would speak up and be like, that's not cool. But I also like don't want to start something. And I also don't want her to think, oh, Rafaela just like is mad about everything and you can't have a conversation. And so I have this, it's like this balance. It's like, is this the hill I want to die on today? No, like I know in my heart that like blah, blah, blah. Like I don't think she's going to go out and, shame people. Like I think it's just kind of weighing that. But I don't know, it's hard, but in my family, because they've treated me like that my whole life, I feel like, okay, I know what you do. I know what you're capable of. I know that if I don't say something, it's going to continue. Um, and I've gotten a lot of backlash from my family. Like I've gotten those things from my family, like, oh my God, we just can't talk about anything in front of you. Like you're so sensitive. Or, just like I've gotten a lot of pushback. Or even my sister, she was like, oh, so what? So every time I want to talk about it, I have to like ask you to leave the room. Are you serious? I'm like, yep, you do. And she was just like you really want to leave the room every time? Yep, I do, because it's harmful. And like I still have family members actively dieting and actively in diet culture, and that view me and my body is like bad. And it's like it's really hard because it just brings me back to all that my childhood experiences of like actively restricting and dieting and hating myself. So I think that's a really important boundary for me to set, because it is just so triggering coming from those specific people. And it's gotten better. The people in my family who are like actively really like shaming don't really, they don't use their words to shame, but like their eyes, their body language. Like I go to get something to eat and it's like, and I'm just like, you didn't say anything, but I know what you feel inside, and it makes me so mad. And So that's a really hard one, especially for people going home for the holidays, or that's always a really big thing. Like, did you guys have Thanksgiving yet? When's your Thanksgiving?
No, we haven't.
Okay, so it's relevant for you because we had our
Yeah.
Thanksgiving in October, which is weird,
Oh,
and
you did? Okay.
I don't know
I
why.
didn't know.
Yeah, so but yeah, for you guys, like, yeah, Thanksgiving and Christmas, like, those are
Mhm.
big things when
Agreeing.
you go back to your childhood home or your family, and you're like trying to work through these things, and you go back home and they're like, oh, you've put on weight, and you're like,
Right.
oh my god,
Right.
like I
Right.
just blow up because it's not just that one time. It's like it's been 24 years of this bullshit.
Mm. Mm.
I get real angry and it sucks.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
it's
have
also,
better advice for that.
no, I mean, that's fine. That's like your experience. I like, it's so valid. And also, I feel like if you come home and let's say you were stressed from school and you even lost weight, maybe they'll be like, wow, you look so good. And
100%.
that is like, there's numerous reasons why it's bad, but it's also could
Yep.
be bad because you might then be encouraged
Yep.
to continue whatever it is. Let's say you haven't been eating because you've just been stressed. And so you're like, oh, well, now I've lost some weight. So maybe this is a good thing. Like it just perpetuates
100%.
the,
Even the last time I went home to see my family, they live about 2 hours away. My grandma, she said, oh, Rafaela, did you lose weight? And I was just like, okay, let's distract her. I was like, oh, yeah, and tried to change the subject. And she kept going back. And I was like, damn. Like, it
mm,
was like, and I haven't lost, like, I don't measure my body. And for like a split moment, it was like, oh, maybe I have, right? Like that joy. And it was like, Rafaela, you haven't, she's psycho, like ignore it. And I tried to like just kind of block it out, but it is still harmful because it's still knowing that the people around me are constantly examining my body to see if it's better, if it's worse, even if they're not saying it out loud, like I know my family is.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
sucks. It
it
sucks.
sucks. It sucks. Also, I mean, kudos to you for even just like telling your sister, like, yeah, like I'm going to leave the room. Like, yes, because it's a hard thing to do. And like when people make you feel so sensitive, I don't know if this is you, but maybe you're like, am I being a little too sensitive? Should
Oh,
I?
100% I do that. I'm like, oh, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I should shrink my body. Like, I'm just being crazy or trying to like make myself feel better so I don't actually have to starve myself anymore. Like, I definitely go through that, and it is so hard. And I
It's
think that's why it's
hard.
really important that we can connect with other people who are like-minded, and like, even if you in California, it's like, okay, you're on the same page as me, and like that makes me feel more validated in my experience. Or like for us to talk on Instagram and be like, okay, that person looks like that, or that person's talking about their struggles with movement. It helps me feel validated and kind of maybe gives me more strength so that when I am around my family or other people, it's like I can remember, like, oh, okay, but I'm not the only person who thinks like this. There are others too.
Yeah, that's
Makes it
like
feel
so
like a cult. Oh my
powerful.
God. Oh no.
Um, yeah, it's a little bit gaslighty. Not
100%.
saying your fan, but just like the society in general, the way they think, it's like kind of gaslighty. It's like really invalidating of your experience. And if you don't fit this mold, there's something wrong. And like maybe you should, and like it makes you literally question yourself,
Yes.
your values, your physical way of being, like
Yeah. All of it.
all of it, man. But I'm glad it's true. Instagram or just social media is such a powerful tool for people to connect and feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Okay, okay, maybe I can do this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
that's exactly it. And that's like the main goal for me, and like whatever I do on the internet is like, okay, like I might feel really low about myself, or like I might be struggling myself, but can I like talk about it, and maybe someone else who's in the same path, or maybe like a little bit like a few steps behind, can be like, oh shit, if she can do it, I can do it. Or like even if sometimes I don't feel like I'm there myself, it's like, okay, like if I'm struggling, like how can I use this struggle and turn it into something meaningful instead of
mm,
it just being a struggle, you know?
yeah,
Otherwise it's
yes.
pointless. It's like if I'm having an anxiety attack, it sucks. All of it sucks. But if I can share it and someone can be like, holy shit, that makes me feel normal, then it's like, oh, benefit of the shittiness. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like we're all, this is so cheesy, but it's like we're all like humans, like struggling. And like that's like, oh, okay, like we're all just like having a hard time, you know?
yeah, honestly, I don't know if you saw, and I will not blame you if you didn't see. Sometimes people talk to me like, oh, you saw my post. And I was like, sorry, I didn't. But yesterday I posted a little question box with like, what did you fail at today? And people's responses
I actually saw
were
that.
so, thank you so much for hyping me. They were so good. I was reading them and I was like,
Yes.
other people struggle too.
Like
Like, I feel like
literally.
I'm the only person who sucks. Like,
It's true. It's true. It's so true. Like even I think like work, like just being in a professional environment, you're like sort of conditioned to like come to work a certain way. You like leave your stuff at home. You know, there's this like narrative. And I feel like sometimes we just sort of have to drop those personas and just be like, no, we're all having like a shitty day or we're struggling. And like, that's okay. Like, it's human, you know?
yeah, I have a major fear of having to like work in an office because I've given up the mask. You know, I'm tired of being like, yeah, everything's fine. Haha. I'm just like, life sucks. Everything sucks. I'm going back to bed. Like, so I'm trying to like kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to get to a point where I can like work for myself because I'm just like, yeah, I don't fit into the molds of society. I don't know how to like conform to those norms of like pretending that everything's okay or like laughing about how shitty the donuts are for your body. Like, you know, I'm not
Yeah.
into it.
Tell me, you're 24?
Yeah.
Damn, nice.
How
And
old are you?
I'm 27.
Nice. Okay, so
27.
close. We're
It's
close.
close. It's
Yeah.
close. What are you like? How do you want to be your own boss?
So it's also like a little addition of like my ADHD makes me want to like do everything
Everything?
ever. So like I'm trying to slowly figure out how to like monetize Instagram to like make it sustainable, or I'm like, I need to do YouTube, or like I don't know.
Mm,
I go crazy on that shit. And I'm also trying to create a mental health platform that connects people to like this mental health services that they need. Because I find that so hard. Everyone's like, okay, I need therapy, but like, where do I go? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's all a blur. I want to have my own fashion brand. Don't know how to do that. That one is harder than I thought. I was like, you know, so I have all these things in my head that I want to do and don't know how to do them. And then I get overwhelmed and don't do any of them. But that's the
right.
goal.
Right. No, I'll just disclose a little bit. I'm the same way. I'm like everything is like so many things to do, to be. And then I'm like that's way too much. I'm burnt out. I need a minute.
That's the thing. Like, even in our society, we're told, like, even apart from like ADHD or anxiety, we're told in society, like, you need to do more. You are not doing enough. Make more
Mm.
money, produce more things. And I'm like, fuck, okay.
Like
Okay, yeah.
hustle culture, right?
Hustle
Is like
culture. You know, be your own boss and boss babes and all the, you need 3 side hustles. And yeah, it's too much. And I cannot do it. I can't.
honestly, who can? Who
And
can?
that's the thing. It's like maybe someone can, but then they're also probably lacking in other areas of their life that we just do not see, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes maybe I've been thinking about this is like maybe people are doing so much as a way to sometimes not face their inner world, really.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
you know,
I
so
know people that are just like so busy because if they stop for like a second, they feel all of their feelings and they're like, nope, gotta keep going.
yeah, it's like uncomfortable to just like feel. So they're like, I'm gonna take on everything. And the minute
Yes,
they have like an hour, they're like, I don't know
yeah,
what to do with myself.
you nailed it. That's it, really. Yeah.
Literally. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yeah,
So,
struggle.
sorry,
It's a
the struggle.
struggle. And I
It
think
is.
that's where
It
it
is.
comes to like prioritizing what really matters to us. Like for me, I'm like, okay, like being an activist or like talking on my platform is like really important to me. How can I continue doing that in a way that I can also like pay my rent? So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
maybe working with brands or like, I don't know what else to do. But you know, it's like, how can you do the thing that's like really means something to you without having to conform to what society tells us about what we need to do to be happy or to live? And it's all a struggle. And I think it's really cool that we can be open and like talk about it all.
Me too. I'm really happy and thankful for this conversation. I'm like so
Yeah.
glad. I'm so glad. I was not thinking about at 24 so much about like hustle culture and like this and that. So I'm like glad that you are. Even though it's 3 years difference, I'm like still like stoked on it.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I want to ask you two things. One is, do you experience burnout like with social media and like being an activist on social media? And my next question would be, do men follow your account? Do they reach out to you?
Ooh,
So those are two questions, and I
those
want
are
to get
good
into those a little
questions.
bit.
Okay, so burnout, yes, every second of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
men, I wish there was more. Honestly, so it's like 87% women,
Mm-hmm.
which is good for like if brands want to work with me, they want to sell to women. So I'm like, so it's good in that sense, but I want to have men involved in this because this isn't just women issues of like fat phobia or mental illness. Like all these things affect so many people. So yeah, I don't know how to bring the men in. But also like I feel like people or like plus size influencers who have men, they're more like fetishizing you instead of
I
like
was,
learning. So I'm
no,
like,
it's
maybe it's
true.
okay.
It's true. There's like kind of almost like a hypersexualization. Like the
Yeah.
women will be in lingerie and they'll be like so sexy and desirable. Um, I was thinking about, do you know the plus size model Ashley Graham?
Yes.
I feel like she's a good example of that. She's like beautiful, but she also has like gorgeous cheekbones and like an hourglass figure, and she's like very sensual. Like she's appealing to a gaze, you know what I mean?
Yes, because she's curvy, but she's still very thin.
In all the
You
right
know,
places,
all
you
the like
know?
flat stomach, but you have the boobs, you have the hips, the perfect hourglass. So she's like, it's like she's desirable enough for like straight sized people to be like, yeah, we'll put her in a magazine or we'll put her in our clothing. But then like fatter people are like, okay, like we're like praising her so hard for being so brave when she's desirable by like all demographics, you know, where you don't really see like plus size models with like a stomach with like thighs without having like the boop, 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 boop. So, and that's another reason like I try to share those things because I'm like, I don't have an hourglass. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm just like, I've said to myself, I'm like, I'm Raffaella shaped. I don't know what to call myself. Like,
You're what? Which shape? Which?
I'm Raffaella shaped.
I
Because
like
I'm like,
that.
everyone's
I
like, you
like
know,
that.
you're a pear, you're an apple. I'm like, well, I don't, like, I'm
I
kind of like
like
this,
that.
and then I go this, and then I look like this. I'm like, I'm Raffaella shaped.
I actually really like that because we're always trying to like label like she's
Yes.
this hourglass pear. If you're a pear, you got to wear this because it'll accentuate. Like it's just you are. That's actually I
Yeah.
love that. I
Like,
love
I've had people
that.
tell me I'm like an apple. I'm like, I don't want to be an apple. Like, someone rudely called me a rectangle, and I was like,
Fixed.
that's
Like
so
what?
mean. But I was also like, I mean, kind of, I'm kind of rectangle-ish, but I'm like, I'm not like a rectangle. Like, I don't know. So I'm just the
Yes,
shape of me. And like,
I
so, but
like
yeah,
that.
like burnout is real as hell.
Yep.
I once was on a mental health panel where people were like, burnout isn't real. If you're experiencing burnout, like you're just doing the wrong thing or like you're not
Mm.
doing it right. And I was like, nope, it is real. I burn out every day of my life. like like I get so overwhelmed and tired and exhausted of everything. If I'm doing like a heavy social media day or like doing a lot of things, I'm exhausted. If I'm answering a lot of comments or DMs, I'm exhausted. If I'm arguing with someone on the internet, I'm exhausted. So yeah, for me, burnout is absolutely constant. And I want to have more of a balance in my life of like, okay, Rafaela, we're gonna put the phone down, take care of ourselves. but I also use my phone to distract myself from my feelings. So then I'm on it all the time.
It's like literally, again, it's like the double-edged sword of like,
Yep.
I need to put it down because I know that'll be good for me, but I also want to use it because I know that I could easily just scroll and not have to deal with like just chilling for 5 minutes or
Yep.
whatever it is.
100%. And so it's like I want to spend time on Instagram because I feel like it's really meaningful and it gives me purpose, like low key, yeah, but it's like it does fill me with joy to be able to like talk about this stuff publicly. Then like yeah, there is a point where it's like, okay, I'm not creating, I'm not adding to the conversation, I'm just mindlessly scrolling. And like yesterday I actually muted like all my favorite influencers because I was like, I keep comparing myself. And I'm like, oh my god, their pictures are so nice, oh their stories are so good, mine look like shit. Like I was just doing that like crazy. So I'm like, no more, Rafaela. Like we're muting them all so like we don't even see them, so we're not even comparing, because it's really harmful for me.
Yeah, and you're like, it sounds like you're like enacting those boundaries with yourself. You're like, okay, like I know this is bad for me, so I'm not going to do this for myself. Like, um, which this is so random side note, but I think you posted, there's like this trend going around on social media of like thin, pretty girls like showing their stomachs and they're like, I'm naturally, do you know what I'm talking about? And I loved that I think you posted in your story, or was this, I don't remember.
I've talked about it a bit because it just pisses me right off.
I loved that you did that. I loved it. It needed to be said.
I'm glad because it pisses a lot of people off. People get so mad, like, stop body shaming them, and they have insecurities too, and they probably have eating disorders. And I'm like, all of those things are correct. You're right. And look at the likes under their page. They have 1 million likes and they have 1 million comments, but oh my god, you're so brave. But I could post the same damn photo and be reported and get like my account deleted or be told I'm promoting obesity or blah 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 blah.
Mm.
It's just fat phobia. It's just like these thin people are like, let me sell you a fitness program, but I also want to be called brave. And I'm like, you can't be both. Stop.
It's true. It's true. And you actually just made me think of another question, which is like, how do you feel when, let's say, you decide, I'm going to wear a bathing suit and go to the beach and like, fuck yeah, and like have a good day. And people are like, you're so brave, or like, what is that
It's
like? Like,
hard. It's really hard because you know it's so well intentioned. Um, like people don't mean it to be mean or hurtful, or people say like, oh my god, I could never do that, like I wish I could be like you, or I wish I could have like your confidence to do something like that. And so it's a bad kind of compliment because people are truly like, wow, I really wish, like I really hope to be in that spot, or I wish I could love myself and be in that position. But it's saying, oh my god, you look like that and you're willing to go out in public, you are so brave. Like that is the underlying tone of it all. Like so it's hard because like I know a lot of like plus size influencers are like, I hate being called brave, I hate it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like it either. If I read it in a comment, I'm like, you're new here. Like I'm not like, me existing in like or putting on a bathing suit is not brave. Me deciding to continue to show up and be public and be vocal even when receiving hatred or backlash, that's brave. You know? So I hope people can differentiate like me having a stomach or me doing something that everyone else does is not brave. But the fact that we're showing up and like trying to fight against the stigma and societal norms, that is brave. So yeah, like I don't hate on people for that. It's just like I just feel like, okay, like I hear where you are and you still think that being fat is horrible and
mm,
like the most unimaginable thing to do is like be okay with it.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a very, it's like a highlight of like where society is at by saying that
Yeah.
in a way.
Right? That's exactly, you're right. It shows like where we're at. Like if someone's like, oh my God, I love that. And they might love my account or love my post, but they just would die if that was them. It just shows like, yeah, where they're at. And like, okay, like you
Mm.
can see my body and like you're happy for me and you don't think I should lose weight, but you think you should lose weight. Like I've had people message me like, okay, am I fat phobic if like I don't think others should lose weight, but like I should? And I was like, yes. I'm
It's
not trying to like label
internalized.
people. It's like you are fat phobic, but it's like, yeah, that is fat phobia. Of like it's still believing that bigger is worse. Like that's the whole concept. So yeah, it's interesting, and I like having conversations with people, and it's hard because sometimes people just get frustrated and send a comment and they don't actually like want to have a conversation, or some people like
Mm.
demand that I explain thin privilege to them, and I'm just like,
Mm.
I'm tired. I don't have the energy for this right now, and I'll like maybe push it back for a bit. And it's interesting. It's interesting.
Interesting. Um, I wanted to ask you another question, and this might be a little personal, so again, no need to disclose
I'm
if you don't
ready.
want to, but you are in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So also you posted this like very lovely video about, it was like videos of like you, your family, your friend, you know which video I'm referring to?
Yeah.
It was very lovely. It like
Aw,
yeah,
thanks.
it made me happy. I was like, oh, this is so heartwarming. Um, but I wanted to ask you, I think this is like a plight for a lot of women going into relationships, whether they're like cis or, you know, not. This is just how you view your body in terms of a relationship. And like specifically, I can only talk about my own experience and some of my friends, like with a man, it gets tricky. I think for like my own experience, again, there's like this notion of like what a woman's body should be like. And I want to know a little bit about like how you've navigated it, how your partner has he been so supportive of like your journey? Like what has that been like for you?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that. So like kudos to you. Um, that's a hard one for me that I haven't like really explored so much, because like I still like we've been together for like 3 years now, and I'm still like self-conscious about my body sometimes,
Mhm.
or like I'll still have ideas in my head like, oh, maybe he'd be more attracted to me if I like, if I was smaller, or like maybe he's unhappy with me, like does he think these things, or like what else am I thinking? But like he is like really fit, and but not, and like I think he's just naturally fit. I don't He also has like a labor intensive job,
Okay.
so he's not like always like examining his body, I don't think. But I think that's also hard that he is in a smaller body than me and he is more physically fit than me. And so I that used to be a big problem for me, and I was like, oh my God, like is he attracted to me, all these things, until a therapist was like, Rafaela, you can tell if a guy's attracted to you or not. And I was like, okay, you're right. And that kind of helped for a bit. And especially like me working through my like eating disorder recovery stuff, it's like I'm trying to eat more food, and sometimes that food isn't always like what people think is healthy or good foods. And then I'm like, oh my God, is he gonna judge me? Like, and these are all internal thoughts. These aren't conversations I have out loud, because I'm like, he's gonna think I'm crazy, or he's just like, I don't know, like I think I know that I overthink so much more, and I know he loves me, and I know he's like attracted to me, and my body has also changed like during our relationship. I think that's a hard one for me, because I'm like, okay, I don't look the same as when we met 3 years ago. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I try to remind myself, I'm like, I love him for who he is, and I know he loves me for who I am, and I'm attracted to him no matter what. I know he's attracted to me, and like trying to bring it down to the basics. And if my brain's really playing tricks on me, I'll like ask him, and sometimes, and he'll always be shocked. He's like, "What?" Like, because it's not something he's thinking about, but it's something that I'm thinking about and things that I'm ruminating about. And it's like, "Oh, he actually doesn't give a shit." Okay. So it's, and like his love language isn't like words of affirmation, so he's not always like, oh my God, your body's perfect, babe, like, oh my God, I want that, but that's just not who he is. And that's okay. Like, he can show me in different ways of just like, I don't know, being with me and just wanting to spend time with me and just all these different things. Because like I know that some creators on the internet are like, oh, my husband like hypes me so hard. I'm like, damn, that is the dream. But I'm learning that like I need to hype myself so hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if I don't have a cheerleader right beside me, like saying all the things I want to hear, I know he's like my number one fan and I know he supports me. And even if even if he does tell me like, oh my god, you're beautiful or you look so great, I still don't believe it. So why, why am I putting so much on him? Like, what is he thinking? What does he want? When no matter what he says, it's not going to change how I'm feeling. So
Damn. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy shit. It is crazy
Yeah.
shit. And like he also like his first language is not English. So he also, I think, has a harder time understanding diet culture and all these things, all these intricacies that just he never knew about before. And so I'm trying to like slowly like teach him about everything that's happening. And also it's like it's kind of a process. It's definitely a weird process, but I would just, yeah, even tell people like it comes back down to you. You're the one that has to look in the mirror. You're the one that has to live in your body every day. If we're always waiting to hear what other people say about us, like it's never gonna work.
Yeah. It's like an endless journey. It's like that is not, it's like an endless and empty kind of journey because ultimately, like, it's so, I want to be careful with what I'm saying, but it's like almost kind of like dependent on, not saying that you are, but it's almost like this idea of like, okay, someone really values the way I look, right? But if they don't, what does that then say about me? It's like there has to be some solid sense of like being comfortable with like who and what you are internally and
Exactly.
externally.
Otherwise, anything anyone says to you ever is
You're
just
so
gonna move
swayed.
you. 100%. It's like, okay, we need to build a foundation for ourselves. And yeah, it feels good if someone says they like my outfit or like my boyfriend compliments me. Like,
Right.
those things can feel
Because,
good. And hopefully it can
right.
be like an addition onto what we've already built for ourselves instead of constantly searching for external validation, which I've also done.
Who hasn't though? And I mean, like you said, like it does feel good and it's like human to want that, but it's an addition to already feeling that for yourself. And some days are better than others, for sure. I'm sure, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And that's another thing is people say it's not just like, okay, I love my body now we're good for life. Like maybe some people can get to that point of like radical self-acceptance. And maybe for some people it's going to always be a journey of like, having to remind yourself like like okay, like my worth doesn't come in my appearance or kind of moving through it. Like my goal is to hopefully have less and less bad body image days. So, like they're less like yeah, or like more infrequent, or like or maybe they're less harsh when they come. They're not as destructive when they come. Instead of like I never want to have a bad thought about my body ever, but just like yeah, I think more like a spectrum. Like working
Yes.
towards like better body image instead of like the other way, instead of like it being black and white,
Yes.
which I
Yes.
also do. I'm like, oh my God, I still feel this way. This sucks. And it's like, okay, I need to remember that's like, but I am so much further now than I was like years ago, or even last year, or even maybe last week. Like, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of like self-judgment that goes into like, well, I don't radically love my body today, so like what does that say about where I'm, but like it doesn't work that way.
I need to
Um
like replay this when I'm like shitting on myself and I'm like, I don't like my body. And I'd be like, Rafala, you need to listen to your own bullshit. Like,
literally.
that happens too. I'm all like, compassion for everyone. And I'm like, I suck so much. I'm just like, I'm the biggest hypocrite. But
Right.
it's
And then you're
not
like,
like,
I'm such a
but the
hypocrite.
thing is, like, because I do believe fully in what I'm saying. It's just like to do it myself is so much harder than to like for me looking at you. I'm like, hell yeah, and I could like hype you so hard and fully believe it. And to myself, I'm like, but I'm an
Mm,
exception. Like,
it's a struggle of a lifetime. you actually just made me think about like the concept of like body neutrality or something. It's like
Mhm.
to ask for self, like to be like, I love my body all the time can sometimes be a lot, like a high goal to achieve, and it's
Yeah,
not always achievable. So maybe just being neutral, like, you know what, this is it. Like, and sort of moving through that maybe puts a little less pressure on like the idea of like absolute body love.
totally. And that's something I've heard a lot. And for me, that really helps if I'm struggling, like within my eating disorder, like struggling to eat. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like I have to go back to neutrality. Like, okay, my body helps me function. Like, I need to feed my
Mm,
body so that I can go on Instagram and talk to people. Like, I
mm,
have to bring it down to the basics.
yeah.
Something for me though, living in a larger body is because I get so much hate constantly, whether it's from the media, my family, like personally, or just societally saying that my body's bad. I almost feel like I have to go to the like positivity or love side to kind of like
I see.
counteract. Because if
I
I'm
see.
just neutral and people are just
Mm,
like pushing me down, pushing me down, pushing me down, that's a hard one for me. So for that, and that's just me personally, is like I'm trying to get to a place of like, no, my body is good and I am pretty and I am these things, so
yeah.
that if I'm getting negative messages, maybe it can like align more in the middle, like balance each
Yeah.
other out. But for someone maybe living in a less marginalized body or like straight sized body, I definitely believe that going to a place of neutrality can be very comforting, because I mean, everyone has their insecurities, but and they might, I was gonna say they might not be as loud. Like they could still be really loud, but I think on like some level you could still know that like, okay, I can still walk into any store and still buy clothing, or like my body, yeah, it's like what your body does for you instead of like the appearance. Like you can separate yourself a bit from that. Where like you go on my Instagram, I'm labeled, plus size influencer. I'm the like, or
Mm,
like a fat woman or a fat activist, or I know it's because I talk about these things a lot, but I have friends who are like fashion influencers, but they're plus size influencers. Like it determines how we view them, how we talk about them. So for me to be like neutral about my body is almost non-existent because it's in like
yeah.
every single conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like a really, like, it's a great, you summed it up. That's a
Thanks.
really,
Yeah, because I've had those conversations before of like neutrality, and I was like, yeah, yeah, and like I didn't really know why it felt like almost inaccessible to me. I was like, like I
mm,
love the idea of it, but why doesn't it feel like it fits? And I think
yeah.
that's it, because like my body's always on my mind. It's always a topic. So it's like
Yeah.
I feel like neutrality is just, yeah, inaccessible for where I'm at.
Just writing this down. Sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm just chilling. We good.
I'm trying to just make sure I've like asked you. I know we said an hour, so I don't want to take too much of your time. So
Oh
I'll
my God,
like,
you're so sweet. And you can
I'll,
also like feel free to email if you have any questions and you're like, oh, I didn't ask her this. You can email me. I will respond eventually. Like, yeah,
okay.
email's the easiest. I mean, yeah, you're most likely to get a response over email versus like Instagram because it's chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can
Great.
definitely hit me up whenever. And
Great. Okay. So I'm going to just then ask you like a question or two to like wrap it up. So I guess where, what, what does being an activist mean to you?
mm,
And what do you, if you foresee taking your activism somewhere, where do you foresee yourself taking it?
I
We
like
kind of
that.
touched on it, but we can get into it a little more.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's kind of like I feel like I was like an accidental activist, but I feel like that's probably how most activism
Mm,
comes about, when people are pissed off about something or see an injustice and they're like, this isn't okay. Yeah, and for me, it was just my daily life of living in a fat phobic family, a fat phobic culture, and like it started off with mental illness because that's the most like debilitating thing for me, and then from there progressed into body image and talking about fat phobia and all the intersections within that. And I'm just majorly empathetic. So I see anything in the world and I'm like, no, what is this? So I feel like my power, the power I hold is my voice. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to use this thing. And even if no one's really listening, I'm just going to scream into the abyss. And finally, you know, I pissed off enough people on the internet that they're listening now. So, which is cool. And that does give me more power to reach more people. But that's just everything for me. It's kind of like what I said, like, you know, taking your struggle and turning it into something meaningful, because I think that helps me get through a lot of my lower times as well, because it's like, okay, like maybe I can talk about this and help someone, or like it also brings like a meaning to my life. It's like, what's the point of just struggling so hard forever and then dying? Like, this is stupid and I hate it. But it's like, okay, maybe I could take my experience and help someone else struggle like slightly less. You know, if they know about ADHD, then maybe they can go get the help that they need. Where like for me, I didn't learn about it until 24, which is still relatively young, but maybe someone can go learn about it at 18 and get some more years of help. And so that's kind of the thing for me. And I told my parents, I was like, what if I'm just like an activist, you know, like what if that's just like my job? And they're like, okay, well, like good luck paying your rent, Rafaela. And I was like,
Right.
I mean, yeah, but like just so much discouragement, because that's not typical. That's not what we associate with like success or like stability. And so I'm trying to navigate it, like instead of, you know, like I have one class left to like my stupid ass degree, and before it's like, okay, go and get a master's, go do this, go do that, and be successful. It's like, okay, well, maybe instead of putting myself through more stress, like why don't I focus on what really means something to me? Like having these conversations matters to me, and like sharing on Instagram. And you know, I want to expand to like, I've heard the YouTube is a good place, because I feel like we could have like these more meaningful conversations. And I don't know, it's just like being able to get these messages out to the people who need to hear them, because it's like, yeah, I feel like we're in an echo chamber, which is great for my validation. But yeah, what about the people who are still so ingrained in diet culture? I'm like, you need to be brought into the conversation. This is making it sound culty again. Like, we need to bring people in. We need to convert everyone. But it's like, but I guess I just see like how much I've struggled my whole life with diet culture. And like, I just don't want other people to struggle in that same way. Like, let's just abolish it. So for me, it's right now trying to make my platform financially sustainable, which makes me feel like a fraud, because I'm like, how dare I profit off of this, you know? And so that's hard, but I'm also trying to realize like, okay, Rafaela, you need to take care of yourself at the same time. I'm gonna get like a blog up and going so I can like have more conversations there. I would just love, like, the dream would just to be like, have like my mental health business, like my like inclusive fashion business, have like platform, do speaking engagements, just like do the thing. I don't know. I don't have real words for you. I just want to like,
No, this is awesome.
you know, do the things that mean something to me and put my heart and soul into them and live that way, instead of like, oh, I have to go dedicate my life to something I don't give a shit about and like on the side, like help, you know what I mean? It's like I also have such a limited mental capacity. Like I'm so tired. Like even after this, I'm gonna have to go like lay down, have a snack, like get my energy back up, and then keep going. So I have to be more selective about what I put my time into, which I suck at because I want to do everything. But you know, if I'm focusing on, okay, school and get a job and also trying to manage this, it's like, well, what if I just focus on this?
Yeah, right. Focusing on one thing that you really enjoy and then not spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah, I spread myself so thin, it's ridiculous, but I'm working to like, I'm trying to do that less so I don't lose my sanity.
Yes. Amen. Because I
Hard.
totally,
It's so hard.
totally. It's hard. It's hard to do in this world. So
I guess it's like the long-term goal. It doesn't have to be like right now that we have to have everything perfect and all figured out, which is something I also really struggle with. It's like, okay, Rafaela, we have time. we're 24, we have time to like do things and get things sorted out.
Mm. Amen. Amen to
Shit.
that.
It's hard. We always feel like there's like a timeline, like, okay, we need to do it by this,
By
and oh
30,
my God, by
like,
30, I need to have my life together. I need to have a house and then pop out a child and then
mm,
do all these things. It's like, what? Like, well, yeah, what if I just want to fuck around on the internet? What if that's what I want to do instead?
literally though.
Right? It's like my
I,
parents, they don't get it, but it's also like maybe my parents don't need to get it.
right.
I've been
Maybe
working
no
on
one needs
that
to get it.
therapy. That was a big one. Like not trying to get my parents' validation.
Mm.
Oof, that's a big one for me. It's like, oh, so I can live my life separate from what they want. Oh,
It's funny because you would think it's such an obvious thing, but it's really not.
right? Yes. It's like we feel like an obligation to our parents or, other people in our lives to make them happy, or at least
Mm.
some people. I'm learning that I'm a people pleaser. And so that's where that
Mm.
comes out for me. I don't know for you, like maybe it's different for you or.
No, I mean, I can definitely relate, you know. I think that's like been an ongoing journey in my life is like there's me and there's people I love that I want to make happy because I love them, but I don't have like it's not like I have to. I don't have to like like somewhere along the lines I'm like I am a martyr and I have to like sacrifice myself for the sake of people and to like to receive that love. And now I'm sort of realizing like, oh wait, that's like I don't need to do that. Like
Yeah, like the right people should love us just for being alive, like just for
mhm.
being who we are, and like not because of what we produce or what we create or what
It's
the
so true.
title is under our names. Like,
It's
you
very
know,
true. There was actually, do you follow, there's this I think it's Nickology or something like that.
I don't think I've heard of that.
She's this woman. Basically, she said I was giving my therapist a list of things I like about myself. And when the therapist read it back to her, they were like, these are things you can do for other people. What do you like that you can't give to others? And I think we're like here to help one another, but also like, how do you just separate yourself from that a little bit, you know?
I
So
agree. That's a
it's,
real, and it's like we're so scared of like narcissism because we're like,
mm,
I can't think of myself, and so it's a hard one. I think. Hmm, this conversation's been so good. Like even my own reflection, like thinking about it, like,
I love it. No, same. I'm
right?
like, I'm learning so much. So
Yeah, it's so good. I think it is so good, and we just keep, talking and reflecting on ourselves and seeing what aligns and what doesn't align with our own like morals and values. And
yeah,
yeah,
yep. Okay, we're over time, and I really just want to take away your time because I know you like you need your rest, you need your day, and honestly, so do I. You know,
yeah, right.
but really thank you so much. Like I feel like a thank you. I like don't even know how to like articulate it, but like I'm so thankful we sat together and we talked. You in Canada, me in California. It feels nice. And I'm trying to think. If you have any questions, I mean, that come up for you and you want to ask me and email me, that's fine. I might reach out to you if something comes up for me. No pressure to answer right away. Take your sweet time. And if you will send me the if it worked, will you send me the recording?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll look at that and see if I can send it, or I don't know how to do things, but like I'll figure it out and see if I can send it to you because that would be super cool. And yeah, I'm like, I don't know. It was like if there's anything I can promote, or if you do a thing and you're like want me to share something, let me know.
Yes, I would literally love that. I'm gonna like reflect on this, think of things, and then maybe I'll reach out to you within like the next week and we can like further this along.
Yeah, if we want to like, yeah, make a post about our conversation, or like even take like bits of the recording and post, or I don't know. I don't know. We can play around and see what we
Yeah,
want.
I would actually love to do that. I think I would love to do that just to
Yeah.
like spread that message. So we should discuss that. I would love
Yeah,
that.
hit me up if you have any ideas. Feel free to just email me whenever. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm totally
Okay.
down. Okay, let's see. I'm
Okay.
gonna see if I can pause the recording and see if it works. Okay, if I pause.
Okay.